Good night, everyone. Johnson. I go to school and go to school all the time. My name is Michelle Spiritual. I'm here to give you the news on tonight. We're gonna talk about Mr. Green petition on Supreme Court. Um, they don't want to hear his case, and he done served like 32 years. And he been released, but he's still not free. So so a Florida man wrongfully convicted, you know, since 1989. The murder had, he was accused of a murder, and he done served 32 years. You know, so the United States Supreme, Court would not hear Mr. Green case. You know, couldn't he would not hear his case. So no evidence tied to Mr. Green. At the crime scene, it did not tie to him. But he still served 32 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. So the state of Florida, this happened in Florida up here, his Mr. Green had been released. He been released, but he's still not free. You know, he done served 32 years. Supreme Court would not hear his case. Would not hear his case. He could end up back in jail. He could end up back in prison. For a murder he did not commit. You know, at United States Supreme Court, it denied his petition. The family's petition to for him to hear the case, and he denied. He still don't want to hear the case. So Green, 65 years old. Mr. Green was convicted since 1989. So that's 30 years, 32 years had passed. A shooting death of 20-year-old Charles Finn flying Brevard County. You know, so um, so the girlfriend of the person that had got shot, claimed, there was robbed by a man while in secluded area of the park, and then driven, to a circle groove where he was shot and Harlock fell. So Harlock, he the one flee from the scene, but seemed like did not question him or had him in custody, but they arrest Mr. Green, and he served that time for 32 years. So Green was sentenced to death. Resentenced to life in prison, and that's why yesterday I had spoke on a whole list, a whole lot of stuff. That's why I banged that penalty for a case something like this here. If you don't have the correct evidence, and do a good investigation, you know, you cannot keep putting death penalty on people like that if you unless you for sure that you have the right person. Now suppose they would have did the death penalty. And he was an innocent man that served 32 years. So so in 2018, the district court ruled prosecutor had improperly, withheld evidence. So they withheld evidence, but the evidence did not went towards Mr. Green. And that the police suspected it was Harlock who killed Flyman, not Green. So the person that had fled from the scene, they had not contact him, question him. I'm quite sure that they didn't. But Mr. Green served the time. So then years later, they found out, in the investigation that Harlock is the one that killed him instead of Green. So a legal rule had corroborated document and said that the prosecutor must turn over evidence. So they're still holding on to evidence. If they would release the evidence and did a good investigation, he would not be in jail and serve all that time. So you must turn over the evidence that could be favorable for the accused. He probably would have been out a long time ago. So Florida Attorney General Ashley Moore appeared to ruling, and last year the appeal court overturned the district court, saying the conviction was improperly overturned. Cause see the evidence and everything, everything was improper. If they would have did all that years ago, he probably would not serve all that time. Because I spoke on that yesterday also. If you don't do a good investigation, and have the proper evidence on this person, you know, you cannot give that person a life sentence like that. Y'all gonna have to start releasing these people out of jail if you don't do a good investigation. And you're having people serving all these many years in prison for a crime they did not commit. So Green attorney said the decision by the Supreme Court, to not hear, still don't want to hear his case, may leave Green going back to prison. Cause see what I'm saying? He been released, but he not free. Their family still petition for his freedom. Because as long as he keep on not want to hear that case, they're still looking over his head. Because in a second, they can say, well, we need you back in here. So Mr. Green he was not given a free trial, a fair trial. He was not given a fair trial. So Mr. Green filed a petition Supreme Court, but court denied. So Green was wrongfully convicted, since 1989. A murder he did not commit. So too, Green had been released after 32 years, but still, he's not free. They just like the Israelite. The Israelite was free. God had a freedom from that slavery. But sometimes when you in that bondage, in that slavery for a long time, and you finally get out, it still feel like you're not free. He done served 32 years. And he out. He wants to be completely out. He wants his name clear. He don't want to have that hindering over his head, and he receive a phone call or whatever the case is, and he can go right back to prison if everything don't get cleared out, if his name don't get cleared out. So 3, United Supreme Court, they will not hear Green case, but he could end up back in prison. That's why the family's petition, for him to hear his case, so they can do the proper paperwork, so he can be free. He released, but he's not free. He's not totally free. He want to be free from this system. He don't want to be living his life and get comfortable, and next thing you know, he got to go back. And go back to serve more time, a crime he did not commit. Evidence been all stumbling all over, been held up. There gonna be another fight. So now the family of petition Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is still denied and don't want to hear his case. So no evidence. No evidence was tied to him. What's not tied to the crime scene? So when the person that got shot, Harlock, he fled. So if he was at the scene and then all of a sudden he fled, how come he was not in for questioning? Or why he was not charged? So whoever did the investigation just let all kind of stuff slide by and just wanted to just place an innocent man in jail. So 2018 was improper withheld evidence. They inheld evidence, and then they're still doing the investigation while the person was still in jail serving all that time. And then they realized, okay, Harlock the one had fled. Then they're saying he shot the man. And then they had to release Mr. Green. All that should have been done at the beginning. I spoke on that yesterday. Y'all have to do a complete report. You have to do a good investigation. So that's why I bang death penalty. Because you can't put somebody to death if you not sure if that person had did that crime. So the police suspect 2018 the police suspect that it was her life. Who killed that young boy? And not Green. He done served all that time in jail. Then all of a sudden, okay, her life, he did the crime. Okay, but you got an innocent man in jail for the crime. So now you realize who really did the crime. So the evidence could be favorable to his case if they only would have had brought the evidence forward, because they said the evidence would not lead to him, but they still put him in place him in jail. So hey, this conviction was improperly overturned, and this could have been solved a long time ago. You know, that's why y'all have to start doing a complete report. You have to start doing a complete investigation, because we have to. We cannot keep having innocent people in jail. We trying to get criminal in jail, not innocent people. The innocent people ought to be free, ought to be released. You got so many criminals out on the street, but y'all constantly arresting innocent people. So we have to start doing this investigation real good. Because these days you got cameras all in the street, all in the building. The cops have cameras on them. DNA. You got all kind of evidence that you can use to try to solve a case. So Supreme Court is not hearing his case. May let Green going back to prison. So Green was not given a fair trial. He was not given a fair trial because the court don't even want to hear his case. He are released, but I feel like he's not free. Protesting for his freedom. It's a different. You being released, but you're still not free. So you're still fighting for your freedom. So one, I request that the Supreme Court listen to Green case. Because, first of all, it's been 32 years. He done served for a crime he did not commit. And you release him, and he's still not free, completely free. So I request that the Supreme Court listen to Mr. Green case. Two, I request that you bring her life in for questioning in charge. Because he flee from the scene. So y'all need to bring him in for questioning. Because you done had an innocent man serve 32 years, and then you don't want to hear his case. So there was no evidence, towards Green, but he still went to prison and served that time. All was, improperly withheld. Evidence was withheld. So everything wasn't even improperly ordered. He wasn't supposed to serve all that time. Y'all, we held the evidence, and so when you finally, release the evidence, then you realize he did not do the crime. So I request that you give Mr. Green his freedom, and have his name clear. That's all he wants. That's all he wants. He released, but he still has some lingering over his head. So I request that you listen to his case, so he can have freedom, so his name can be clear. So there was no good investigation. So you all allow an innocent man, to serve 32 years, in prison for a crime he did not commit. And then a crime he did not commit, but then you still don't want to listen to his case. So and now you don't want to listen to his case, but listen. I request that you listen to his case. Have Hairline in for questioning in charge. Because he the one that flee from the crime scene. So Mr. Green, I request that Mr. Green be free. Have his name free. Listen to his case. So could this man This man already served 32 years. 32 years in prison. All he wanted his name to be clear. Because he has to find a job to support his family. So he don't want to be trying to find a job and all that on his file. He been innocent. But you can't tell nobody he innocent because all they're gonna do is pull up his name and all that is gonna pop up. So I request that you listen to Mr. Green case to give him his freedom, so his name can be clear. You know, so so that's all the news I have for you today. You know, it was about Mr. Green, served 32 years in prison. For a crime he did not commit, and I just talked about that yesterday. We have to start doing a good report. We have to start doing a good investigation. We have to be on top of paperwork, evidence, and everything else because we have to stop having innocent people in jail for a crime they did not commit. And you have the real criminals that's still on the street, but we constantly arresting innocent people. So we have to be careful. That's why I bang death penalty because lately you have not been arresting criminals. You've been arresting innocent people that's serving 20 and 30 years and get out. You know, then later on you realize who really did the crime, but that person already served all the time. You wait a long time for the evidence. Held the evidence. The evidence wasn't even towards him. So that's all the news I have for you today. I question Mr. That's a Supreme Court listen to Mr. Green case. To give him his freedom. Because he have not had a fair trial. So that's all the news I have for y'all today. Y'all have a blessed night, and I see y'all on the next video.